Welcome back. We have been talking about what a city-county merger might look like, or whether or not that's even something we would want. Now, the folks at Better Together, as you heard my previous guest, Mike Hania, talk about, they envision ideally something like the government that exists in Indianapolis, Indiana, or Louisville, Kentucky. Today and henceforth, I will refer to that as Loserville, Kentucky, because tonight at 6, the University of Louisville will play my beloved Kentucky Wildcats in basketball. Kentucky will prevail, I have no doubt, but nevertheless, it is Loserville from here on out. So in Loserville, they have something called a Unigov, where it's one big central county government that disperses its wisdom to all of the residents. And that's kind of what they'd like to see here. And I don't think we have any need for anything like that, quite frankly. But there are people who've studied this issue a lot more than me. One of them is my friend Jennifer Bird, who was kind enough to come in studio, and she's helped form a group called Common Sense for St. Louis. And really, Jennifer, who could disagree with that?
I would love to know. I would love for them to identify themselves so I can point them out publicly.
Exactly, yeah. So you kind of put this group. I mean, you've been at the forefront of facing this issue back when you told me people looked at you like you were wearing an aluminum hat.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in February of 2011, a study was published by the PFM group, and that was paid for by Rex Singfield through Missouri Council for a Better Economy. And, I was going around from different municipalities where there was a small core group of us, and you know some of them, Teresa Douglas, Lisa Panett, Tony Pasosa, Gary Wiegert. There were, quite a few of us. Renee Artman, as a matter of fact, eventually came on board with us because common sense prevails. And common sense tells me someone doesn't spend a ton of money on a study like this. This was a study to look as much of an apples-to-apples comparison of the various city and county departments. You don't spend a bunch of money on a study like that and then do nothing with the information. And city-county merger has been, I grew up in U-City. That's all we ever heard about. And in the late 80s, there was a push for it, and I think it was Gene McNary ultimately scaled it back to be basically an attempt to consolidate the county into 21 municipalities as another step towards a merger.
I brought this up to Mike Hania off the air, and I meant to bring it up on the air, and I kind of forgot. But ultimately, if you bring the city back into the county as another municipality, it reforms county government in and of itself.
Absolutely.
And you've suddenly got a lot more of that influence, of the same influences that have ruined city government in many ways and led to a lot of the problems they face today, suddenly has that influence on county government and access to county taxpayer money.
That's absolutely correct. Let me simplify it for everyone, because I know we've heard this. Ever heard the expression, so goes Chicago, so goes Illinois?
Yeah.
It will be the same thing here, except it will be St. Lousy misery. Because with the entry of the city, whether it's as a municipality or obviously if it's a full-on Unigov, it's hard to believe it could be worse, but it could always be worse. But if they re-enter as a 91st municipality, they are the largest municipality. They will automatically gain 2 council seats. Okay, do you see where I'm going here, folks? 2 council seats automatically. My belief is that they will argue for a third and probably win, because everything's democratically controlled here in this region.
Right.
The economic engine of the state, which is also funny that we're 47th in the state. It's a whole other story, but something else to think about. So that, you will not, all the failures that have pushed the city into decline for the last 60 years it's an infection. It will spread to the county. There's no incentive. If you give a drunk teenager a new car every time he wrecks it, are they going to stop recklessly driving? No, they're not.
No.
So why am I going to give, car keys to the drunken sailors in the city and hand them the keys to the county car? I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, and your point earlier, as we spoke off the air, is whether or not we've seen a few of the municipalities kind of go away via attrition. There's clearly a move where they would like to pick and choose which other ones are going to go away. In one scenario, they would pretty much all go away, and you'd have 5 or 6 boroughs, so to speak, like they have in New York.
Correct.
In the other one, you'd simply have the city come back in as a municipality as like the 91st municipality, where they would probably eventually dominate city council.
Correct.
County
They
council.
they completely would. They absolutely would. I mean, and that's a very dangerous thing. The city was peaked in its population in the 1950s at over 850,000 people. Today, it's 318,000, and we've got 989,000 in the county. So these are from 2010 census numbers, and you can verify this at uscensus.gov. Feel free to verify what I'm telling you. And so what you've seen is a shift, and people will make all kinds of accusations as to why people left the city. And some may be accurate, some not. But the fact of the matter is the city has been declining and has been, frankly, under I call it regressive left, because if you follow the left's agenda and their policies all the way to the end, you will regress.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
let's
Your
go to
wallet
gun
will
control.
definitely regress.
Right, exactly. So the regressive agenda has caused the city. A lot of people have left the city. They don't want this. People will leave St. Louis County, same reason. And ultimately, there are people, I talk to a lot of people, and they're like, we'll leave the state. I'm one of them. I will. I mean, I cannot reward fiscal irresponsibility. I cannot afford to do it at home, and I certainly don't expect for the rest of the world to pay for other people's failures. And let's talk a little bit about county. Because there seems to be some misinformation, and I'm holding this up. You can see it. If you ever come to one of my presentations and I have a PowerPoint, you'll see it yourselves. Let's see what St. Louis County already supports. St. Louis Convention and Visitors Commission, Great Rivers Greenway, Lambert St. Louis International Airport, Busch Stadium, St. Louis Taxi Cab Commission. Of course, the Rams are gone. MSD, St. Louis Community College, Edward Jones. Here's some ones that you'll really recognize: Missouri History Museum, Metro, St. Louis Zoo, Science Center, Botanical Garden, and Art Museum. We support these things. So it's not like we're taking advantage of the city. We're actually already in partnership with a lot of things. And yet, the Art Museum, the History Museum, everybody remembers Robert Archibald, or I hope they do, bought a property unappraised from Freeman Bosley Jr., and over $1 million, was it 1.2 million unappraised. It later, after a public stink, it appraised at like $425,000, and of course he had to pay the back taxes on this as part of the sweet deal. And it was found to have soil contamination, so you couldn't do anything with the property afterwards. This is Robert Archibald. Okay, who's paid over $520,000 a year salary, over $500,000 a year salary to be a public servant. Do we have a problem with this? Let's talk about Bob Nation. Same thing while I'm on this roll. Chesterfield mayor talked up Metro a whole lot. Then after he didn't run, he stopped being mayor. Boom, he's appointed to head up the Metro at $250,000 a year salary, plus a $400 a month car allowance. And of course, my twisted mind is like, why not a free bus pass if you're all about Metro? But
Yeah.
I mean, these are our so-called public servants, and they're making that kind of money. And our U.S. household median income is just under $60,000 a year per the census data, uscensus.gov. Household median, not one individual. $250,000 and he's more now. $250,000 in a salary to be a public servant. What is wrong with us? I mean, Nancy Rice pushed Proposition A, so-called local control of the police department, in 2012. Right. Okay, she was with the Safer Missouri. This is a dangerous thing. These are people who are paid mouthpieces that pay no price for being wrong in their job. She said that the St. Louis City Police Department was going to save $6.2 million per year by taking control of its own police department. I was opposed to it for one main reason, several, but the main one for me was city-county merger. The city cannot come into the county as a municipality or full-on Unigov, without having control of all of its own departments.
Which it
now has,
right?
Now it has.
Yeah,
okay,
right.
So this woman is paid to be a mouthpiece, and guess what she is now? She's the board director for Better Together. She is a Democrat political operative. And this is the fact. People don't have all the information. Look, I don't want St. Louis City to fail. I don't. But I don't think the region is going to fail, and the sky isn't going to fall, and Chicken Little isn't going to run around the highways and block traffic and do all kind of crazy things and peck holes in the hoses so all the water floods. I mean, this is not going to be a huge crisis. There is a failure of leadership. We have people that complain about crime stats and no companies want to move here. Well, where's the leadership that says, hey, this is a large region. Certain areas have problems, but it's not the whole region.
Right. Let me get to Mayor James Knowles is called in here from the city of Ferguson. Mayor, how are you?
I'm doing great, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing well. You've been listening to this conversation. What's your take on it?
Well, I will just let me correct one thing my friend Jennifer said, and I agree with a lot of what she said. It was John Nation, not Bob Nation.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Bob Nation, he's the current mayor of Chesterfield, but you're right.
Sorry.
It's very confusing for a lot of people. 2 mayors in a row, both with a similar last name. But, I'll tell you what, I mean, Jennifer's right on a lot of points. I think what she just mentioned about regional leadership is really the big issue here. We talk about trying to change how governance is in this region, but we have a hard time getting our current regional leaders to step up and be real regional leaders. We have the county and the mayor of St. Louis arguing over things like Metrolink, can't even bother to pick up the phone and call the mayor of St. Louis and tell him, hey, you know what, I don't like what you're doing with Metrolink. I'm going to send a letter. Most recently, we talked about, they talked about that in the news about how East-West Gateway, everybody was on board with a federal grant, and the city of St. Louis applied for, and the county decided to send an opposing letter without even telling the city of St. Louis. I mean, that's just a lack of leadership in the county and in the region. And I don't know that Unigov is the answer to that, because we could fix that just by working together. And I think we see a lot of groups like the Municipal League and others. You see groups working together in the region. I don't know that you have to force consolidation to do that.
Yeah, I thought about that, and also earlier my guest Mike Hania had mentioned that there was no cooperation between the 911 systems. You took issue with that as well.
I did, and it's frustrating. I mean, when we saw everything that happened in Ferguson, the initial response when we had code 1000 and then a code 2000, I forgot how far up the line they went, but we had officers from 7 different counties across the metro region show up to deal with the response. And by the way, this whole argument that our radios don't talk to each other, that's a decade-old argument that's been fixed for nearly a decade. The STARS system, which is the St. Louis Area Regional Response System, they've upgraded the radios. When the people from Franklin County got to Ferguson, our radios talk to each other. So, this whole idea that the only way for police agencies or law enforcement to work together is that we all get in the same uniform and merge all their governments together, that's crazy. We had people from Jerseyville, we had people from the east side show up here to help during the unrest. Our radios talk fine to each other.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they throw everything at the wall to see what sticks, because what this is really about is Rex Sinkfield wanting to merge everything under one umbrella, and he thinks that he'll be able to cut back taxes that way for himself and others like him. And then I'm all for cutting taxes, and I'm all for having a very efficient system, but I think he's dreaming that in his head, and I don't think he really sees what the other effects of some sort of Unigov merger would have on the people in this region.
Yeah, that's a good point. Mayor James Knowles from the city of Ferguson. Listen, Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas, Mark, and hi, Jennifer.
Hi, thanks. I'll see you hopefully on Thursday.
Yep. Thanks for listening. We appreciate it. Thanks for calling in, Mayor.
All right, take care.
Yep. Yeah, I'm up against it a little bit time-wise here, but some final thoughts on this, Jennifer?
Yeah, exactly what he said. These are leadership failures in a lot of cases. Merging the city and the county is going to reduce crime stats only by dilution, not by actually solution. And, you've got 248 employees per county. Citizens per county employee in the county, and 48 citizens per city employee. We're backwards. We're overpriced, overpaid. I didn't even get to talk about the salary. I wish I could. The salary discrepancy between the city employees and the county employees is almost twice as much, with a population that's a third less. This is crazy. This is a push because a lot of people stand to benefit big. Property owners like Paul McKee, probably in North St. Louis City, when we merge or rejoin, we're reclassified. So that brings more federal dollars, because we'll be one of the top sizable cities in the nation, more federal dollars, and then I bet we'll start seeing urban renewal and sprawl. So once again, McKee can line his pockets from properties he picked up for a song or nothing.
Good.
People like that. So, and Mayor Slay, what's he going to do after he's mayor? Is he going to work for Better Together or Metro? Well, we should ask these questions.
Sure. No, all good questions. Jennifer, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I know we didn't give you enough time. I wish we had more time, but we'll continue to talk about this.
I so appreciate it. It's an honor and privilege, and I'm very grateful.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Bird from Common Sense for St. Louis. Got to get to